I've always operated this business as people first, client second, revenue last, right? Because if you get the first two right, the revenue is very easy.
Welcome to another episode, season 6 of my podcast, Relentless Life on Your Terms. I have another special guest and friend of mine. We did our first podcast episode back in October 2020 during COVID on Zoom, and I always wanted to come to his office and talk about his success. Robert Tadros, thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me, Chris.
Now, you do run an amazing company. It's called Impressive, which is like your statistics and your results. So we're going to talk about how you started in digital marketing, how you started entrepreneurship to where you are now. Talk about, obviously, you've also got a podcast. You've recently come off the back of a massive award, which very, very proud that you won that, and our future workings together as well and all that stuff. So let's start from the start, Robert. Tell us a bit about your journey. How did you get into running a business?
Yeah, so it actually started back in early 2000s. I was coming out of uni. I was studying architecture, and I was working, a couple of part-time jobs, and I thought there's got to be a better way to make money. So I started importing products from the US into Australia, white labeling them. The brand was called Boost Vitality. And mum and dad are in the garage packing boxes. This is early days. I was maybe 19, 20 at the time. And I learned very quickly the art of building online brands, right? This is really early days of like early 2000s. Google's still very fresh into Australia. Fast forward 3 years, I ended up selling that brand to quite a large pharmaceutical chain. I'm not going to mention the name, but it was quite a large, one of the largest here in Australia. And that was the journey into e-commerce and marketing. So I kind of pivoted away from architecture to more of a master's in marketing, did a marketing degree to just understand the fundamentals of marketing. And I decided then to go out and get some real life experience. Going through a sales process at the age of 21 was a huge experience for me and a great way to get started. But the reality is I had no other experience. So I decided to get into the corporate world, worked at Census at the time, which was, the yellow pages and white pages. They had a huge monopoly over the industry. And I, worked my way through the ranks from, very junior marketer all the way through to managing the top 1% of their clients by the time I left the organization 8 years later. And then I decided to go to the dark side, the agency side. And I learned a lot. What you learn in a corporate environment is very different.
What was it that appealed to go to the agency side?
The fast-paced environment. Corporate tends to be, as I'm sure you can appreciate, it's a bit slower. There's a lot more red tape. There's a lot more politics. A lot more, it's just it's a different pace, right? And I tend to be, whatever I do, I run a million miles an hour. So I do like a fast-paced environment, which is, the agency landscape really satisfied that need. So worked in a couple of agencies, and the time sort of came for me to go, well, I sat at every side of the table, right? I knew the client, how the clients thought. I knew the agency perspective. I understood the corporate perspective, and I thought it was probably time for me now to go and have a crack. So for the first 6 months of me going out on my own, to be honest, I had no idea what I was doing. I was still trying to figure it out, right? I'd gone through a sale process. I worked in corporate. I worked in an agency. I knew I loved marketing, but I didn't really have an idea of how to start a business right from the get-go. I've always been very entrepreneurial, and ever since a little kid, right? And I backed myself, and I knew that I'd be able to figure it out, and I did, right? It took me 6 to 7 months to figure out A, the workings of the agency, B, who was going to be my first hire, and C, and most importantly, the name of the agency. So, for about 6 months or so, I sat there and I would note down all the reoccurring words that would come up out of any conversation I'd have with a client, whether it was after a reporting call, a strategy call, even a coffee with them, right? And the common word was impressive, right? So, I went hunting for it, and Fairfax owned it at the time, and we made them an offer, and the rest is history. So, it was an amazing kind of 6 to 7 months to really get my teeth stuck into building the business and just building the different layers within the agency.
Now, I know you've grown from strength to strength, and you've turning over a great business over 8 figures. You've got always up to 80 people in different countries, 85 staff globally. Obviously, through that scale process, you would have had a lot of valuable lessons. What were some of the biggest setbacks that you had, and how did you deal with them?
But my biggest setback, and I think my biggest learning in business to date, is that building a 10-person agency or a 10-person business to a 20 is very different. 20 to 40 is very, very different. 40 to 80, shit starts to break, right? And that's been the biggest learning, is that the business that you build for a $1-2 million business is very different as you start to double in size. And the biggest learning is you can't just band-aid things, right? Which is something that I did for probably the first 5 years. I band-aided processes, right? This process is not working. Rather than going back to the drawing board and
analyze the
refining
root
it.
cause of what happened.
Correct. I just band-aided and put another process on top of a process. And what we ended up with at 5 years is just layers and layers of processes, and we became very slow as an agency, right? So over the last few years, we've been stripping everything right back, just untangling a bowl of spaghetti, basically, right? From our products that we take to market, which services that we productize, to the way that, how we operate as an agency internally, to our communication frameworks with clients, to our strategic frameworks. Everything that we do is literally under the knife, right?
Which means can change.
It can change, and we need to be able to adapt, right? I mean, 80 people, we're still not, yes, we're a mid-tier agency. We're not, we're not 100 plus, but we're also not a small agency either. So the processes and the systems that you burn to scale a company, they need to adapt.
So you need to be nimble?
You need to be very, very super nimble and super agile, right? And very dynamic in your approach as well. And that's something that I see a lot of agencies, I coach a few founders, and they're still operating by the same systems that they had when there were just a couple of people. It just simply doesn't work like that.
I had one of my mentors used to say, whatever you learned from 0 to 1 million, you need to forget. From 1 million to 10 million, then you need to forget that from 10 million plus. Correct. Because you need a different skill set. So Absolutely. That mindset that brought you to the 7-figure business, in your case, you said 5 million or 10 million, you need a different mindset, you need different learnings, different mentors that can actually take you.
It's a different business, right? Even the people need to be different, right? Like there are certain individuals that will get you to 2 million or 10 million that simply will not get you post that, right? And that's not a fault of their own. That's their capability, right? They sort of tap out at that level. And yes, some absolutely can come on the journey and grow and develop, but a lot of them they're happy in that comfort zone, right? Of that, let's call it $1 to $10 million, $10 million business. So the skill set and the requirements that you need as an agency or as a business, I think once you get past that $10 million, looks very, very different, right? The different layers, and we're very conscious of not being very hierarchical in our structure, but there are certain layers that you need when you get to 80 people plus.
And you spoke about this too. You're part of entrepreneur organization, which is basically mentoring and helping other people.
Correct.
And I think when you surround yourself with good business owners, it actually allows you to bounce ideas, to see what you could do differently. As you're mentoring, I'm sure you've had mentors as well in the past that have helped you scale your business.
Absolutely.
That have influenced you in your business decisions.
That's right. But, everyone, even yourself, Chris, like we all learn from each other. I think even spending some time with you and learning how you run your organization and with other, buddies of mine within EO or just within my business network, we all bounce ideas off each other, right? We all learn from different experiences. And yes, our businesses might be different, but at the end of the day, they're still people businesses.
Yeah, right? Look, you got to seek counsel. And I think, I had another one of my mentors say you should learn from different industries because what's not working here might have a massive impact here.
Exactly right.
But also, what you said's true. A guy said, show me your business problem, I'll show you a people problem. It's all about people. It's all about business.
That's right.
So it's about leadership and upskilling.
Yeah, and I've always operated this business as people first, client second, revenue last, right? Because if you get the first two right, the revenue is very easy.
Which is basically the Branson mentality.
Correct, right? That's exactly right, right? So if you get the right people in the right seats doing the right things, the rest takes care of itself. Or if you just focus too much on the clients and you don't get your people right, the clients will feel that and eventually they'll churn. And I learned that the hard way early days on in business, right? So it's very super, super important. One of the biggest lessons that I've learned in business is to make sure that you have the right people in the right seats doing the right things.
It's the hardest thing, but yeah, I guess when you've got mentors or people leaving, you said you mentor people that have the battle scars, gives you so much more confidence to listen to them. They know what it's like to have a big payroll, to scale a team, for a team member to walk out, for you to have to let someone go. They've experienced that, so they can pass on that wisdom and that knowledge.
Correct.
Now, I know you're an avid fitness person. You believe fitness is very, very important when it comes to business as well.
Yeah, I've from experience again, coming out of COVID, I put on a lot of weight. I got out of rhythm, right? I was always a very super fit guy. And then COVID kind of rocked me around a bit, like I'm sure it did with a lot of other people. And I saw a direct correlation between my fitness levels and my business performance. And as I started to kind of come out of COVID and get back into the gym, into my running and into my fitness, and really start to track a lot of my, biomarkers, my sleep, my HRV, a lot of kind of the key metrics that I track through my Aura, by the way, if anyone's watching. So
There you go.
I'm
Shout out to the Aura ring.
Big fan to Aura. Thank you very much, guys. I literally see a direct correlation between that and my business performance. I'm clearer, I'm sharper. I don't get up in the morning with, that cloudiness that we tend to get up with if you drank the night before and so on. And even just throughout that journey, I quit alcohol 3 years ago. Shout out to Huberman and, Peter Attea.
Andrew Huberman, amazing.
I follow a lot of those guys, and alcohol is literally poison. There are no benefits to it, right? And I talk to a lot of people about this, and but a glass of wine is good for you. Just go and eat a punnet of blueberries, right? Like you'll get the same antioxidants
with
right?
wine.
With wine, right?
And
so
cheese.
No, without the wine. So you can have the cheese and the blueberries. Look, I don't have anything against alcohol, and I'm not suggesting that I'll never drink ever again. But at the moment, I'm really kind of enjoying this no alcohol a life. It's been an absolute game changer for me.
I want to discuss a couple of things because you told me something, and I'm proud of a lot of my friends' achievements. But I remember a couple of years ago, we both won a Business Newsweek award, and we were voted in the top 100 entrepreneurs for the year, 2 years in a row as always. And we were right neck and neck both years. I always saw that when I saw the top 100, we were right there each other. But you told me something which was super impressive. And every time I say it, I'm looking at your t-shirt and thinking of you anyway. But you did your first marathon.
That's right.
11,000 people competed.
That's right.
You were in the top 8 and you finished in under 3 hours in 2 hours and 57 minutes.
Correct.
Now that's in the top 80. So that's fantastic. How did you
my
manage?
age group? Yeah,
that's incredible. How did you do that to finish a marathon? Because I know you never trained for that long before you committed to it.
Yeah, so it was actually a 16-week training block, and I have a lot of discipline, right? That's probably one of my key values and one of my core my core disciplines is literally discipline, right? So I signed up to Melbourne Marathon. I engaged as a training coach, Rohan, who's been an absolute champion. And when I first sat down with him and I said, Ro, look, I want to run a sub 3. The first question he asked me was, have you run a marathon before? And I said, well, no. And he just had a bit of a giggle and he said, mate, like, just how about we just aim for a sub 3:30? And I said, no, I want to run a sub 3. Mind you, I've only started running earlier this year, right? Anyway, he just looked at me as like, this is like crazy maniac, right? Like, what is wrong with this bloke? But anyway, he wrote up the plan. And he said, look, let's just track your progress and see how you go. And this is kind of where my resilience really came in, because as I started as I started the training block, kind of second week in, I started to actually fatigue, right? It was a lot of training. I mean, I was starting to run sort of 50, 60 Ks a week, and it compounds.
Of course.
But I kind of dug really deep, and I stuck to my goal, which was that sub 3. I put in the work. We got halfway through as we started to get into sort of like the strength component of the block. I felt like I was starting to get a lot faster, and I was starting to actually recover a lot quicker. And that in itself gave me motivation. It kind of, it helped me push on and just continue.
Good forward indicators.
100%, right? And then the last month of the block, as we start to sort of peak around 100K a week, we did a couple of race simulations, and I was running my paces. Just for the listeners, to run a sub 3, I was kind of aiming for a sub 4:15 minute pace across the 42.5 Ks. And, performance anxiety started to kick in, right? And I started doubting myself, right? Like I'd done the training. I knew I was feeling good. I was feeling strong, but I couldn't help but have these little demons in my mind that kept just popping up every now and then that, there's no way you're going to be able to hold that pace for 3 hours or so. Yes, you've done the training. And I started to really get into my own head. And in the last couple of weeks, I did a lot of meditation, which is something that I normally do anyway, but I started to double down on that. And just to get my mind in a state where I was calm and I could actually just fight some of these demons, because it was very taxing, right? Anyway, 24 hours before the race, sat down with Rowan. Rowan's like, mate, I've trained a lot of people, but there's not a lot that will, if you do this, if you can actually pull this off, they'll be able to do this with the limited amount of running experience that you've had. And that in itself actually gave me a huge push.
I'm going to do this now.
Huge confidence boost, right? I got super anxious 24 hours out of the race.
Did you sleep all right?
I didn't sleep the night before. I slept for 2.5 hours the night before. I got up, got to the start line, and this sense of calmness just came over me, right? It was actually really bizarre. It was like a complete 180.
It's when preparation meets opportunity.
100%, right? And I knew that I was ready, and I was going to just give it everything I had.
He gave me chills because that's the first thing I thought of.
Right.
So,
and he gave me the race plan. He said, just stick to the plan. And it was, first 0 to 3Ks, run a, 4:15, stay calm. Everyone's going to pass you, and that's okay. Let them pass you. You'll catch them. He goes, I just want you to get to the 30K mark and feel like your legs just want to go.
You're ready to go.
Right. He goes, and that's where the marathon starts. So I held a 4:13-minute pace up until, as an average, across to the 30K mark. And then I caught up to the 3-hour paces, and I remember I turned over to them and I said to the pacer, what's the official time? What are we coming in at? And he's like, at this pace, we'll get there about 2:59:30. And in my mind, I was like, 30 seconds, shit, that's cutting it very short, right? Because the hardest part of the race is coming up. It was around the tan, around the main road where it actually goes uphill, and it's like the death zone. It's where a lot of runners fall and collapse. So I get up under the bridge, Art Center. I go up the hill, go up the tan, and I'm feeling good. Legs are still feeling fresh. I'm fighting. I was feeling good, but internally, this is where I had to really battle those demons. Right, they all came back. Right, like, you're not going to finish this race. You're not going to be able to hold it. And anxiety kind of started to kick in, but again, through just breathing and just kind of calming myself, I got up to the main road around the roundabout, and then I just bolted home to the MCG. And I was averaging. So typically at this stage of the race, most runners just want to finish within the pace that they're running at, right? So I was averaging a 4:13-minute pace up until the 30K mark. From 30 to 35, I got to 4:11. From the 35K mark to 42, I was hitting a sub 4. So I just had all this energy to just finish the face strong. And I ended up finishing it at 2:57:47. So the key there was I had a plan. I executed perfectly to the plan that Rohan gave me. Literally, like, every single split I had calculated perfectly throughout the race. And the big learning for me was, even in business, right? Like, business for me is a big marathon. There are times where you're going to hit that 30K mark, right? And it's going to be bloody hard and it's going to be brutal. But the reality is, if you've got the goal and you stick to the plan, you'll execute, and you execute well.
Flawlessly.
You'll come out stronger.
I need to ask you this. I love the breath work. And I teach this to my kids, a lot of people, or myself. When you're very, very nervous, the best way to recalibrate is breath work.
100%.
Because when your heart rate's going crazy, the first thing that goes when you're stressed, when you have high anxiety, when you're having a panic attack, the first thing that goes is your breathing.
That's right.
So if you can focus on your breath work, and really that meditation really helps, you can bring it back. Did you visualize yourself finishing?
I'm very, very big on visualizations. In fact, a lot of my mates give me shits for this because they're like, "Oh, you've already visualized coming across the finish line, haven't you?" I was like, "Yeah," and I was going to come in at like 2:58 is what I visualized, and I came in at 2:57:47.
You ran that race before?
That was the first marathon I'd ever run.
No, but I'm saying in your head.
In my head, I'd ran that marathon 3-4 times.
You can actually put yourself in such a mental state where you've actually done it before.
100%.
So you can actually see and visualize. And I'm terrified of heights. So I went and bungee jumped, and I jumped out of a plane twice. And I remember when I bungee jumped, I was terrified. I could see my heart pounding. I had no shirt on, obviously. And I was so scared. I was so nervous. And I looked at my ex-partner at the time. I go, "Do you think I'll jump?" She goes, "I know you'll jump." And in my head, I said, "I'm either going to faint up there, I'm jumping. I'm coming down. So one way or another, I'm coming down." And then I look at the guy looks at me, and he's got my ankles really tight, so tight. And he goes, "Don't look down." And I go, now I've got to look down, yeah? So you got to jump really tight towards the end. And just before I bungee jumped, I had to do 6 hours worth of dental work. And the only two things I dislike is dental work and heights. So on the way to the dental work, I was in Thailand. I saw one of those little brochures in the back of the cab. So the guy goes, "Hey, take me here." My ex-partner goes, "You're going to bungee jump?" I said, "I've always wanted to do it. I've never had time. Let's go." But I wanted to do that and the dental work. So anyway, I went to the bungee. I got to the top. My heart was pounding. He goes, "Count to 3 and jump. Don't look down." I looked at him. I felt like grabbing and throwing him with me. I jumped to the end, barely jumped because my ankles tight. He goes, "1, 2." I just jumped.
Yeah.
Because I looked, as soon as I got to the end, I had to look because it told me not to.
Of course.
So I thought, oh man, I looked down, I go, shit, what? And I just jumped.
Well, it's quite interesting you bring up breath work, right? And even in that example, this is science. So a panic attack will only last for 90 seconds. Fact. The way to disarm it is through breathing. And the only reason why people get caught up in this panic attack loop or this anxiety loop is because they keep thinking about them having the panic attack.
And it keeps coming back.
So it keeps coming back. So every time you get to the 90 seconds, it resets.
I never knew that.
Anxiety, stage fright, whatever it is, it's the thoughts inside our head that actually propel this forward.
So you I did not know that's a 90 seconds.
The way to disarm it is through breathing, right? 5 in from the nose, out 5 from the nose, right? It's like box breathing, right? You do that 5 times, it will actually disarm it. Right. So there's so many different breathing techniques, and I'm definitely no expert at this, but throughout all the, training that I've done, and I do a lot of breath work and a lot of meditation, I've learned how to just disarm certain anxiety or certain emotions depending on the situation that I'm in. Even when I'm running, there is a particular type of breathing that I do if I start to see that my heart rate starts to elevate. Right. So, running for 3 hours, 4 hours, ultra marathons, whatever it is, there are ways that you can kind of get into a bit of a rhythm with your heart rate and stabilize it.
Conscious breathing.
To be able to sustain it for a long period of time.
So when I used to do fighting, as you know, I love that. And everything was about how you breathe.
Correct.
Mouth
especially
out,
in fighting.
so they don't get tired.
That's right.
So it's very, very important that you breathe through your nose, out through your mouth, because you can sustain your fitness better.
That's right.
And it's all correlated. And even when they talk about monks, the first thing they do when they're meditating or when they teach kids teaching other people, it's focusing on your breathing.
And it's like we all think we know how to breathe. We actually don't. So all of us, we breathe very shallow from the chest, right? It's the diaphragm breathing that actually comes from the stomach.
Of course.
Right? And there are ways that you can strengthen this muscle and, and kind of, learn how to breathe through the diaphragm and then bring it up to the chest. Again, depending on the style of breathing that you're doing. But super, super important for any sort of exercise, even in business, right? If you ever, for example, if I have a stressful day at work, sometimes I'll come into this office, I'll lay down on the couch and I'll do this type of breathing. Well, it's NSDR, again, something that Huberman talks a lot about, non-sleep deep rest, or yoga nidra, what it's actually formerly known as. So, and I just do 10 minutes of it and it just disarms me, right? And I can track it in my aura. I can see my heart rate automatically comes down. So it gets that stage just before you're actually just before you go to sleep, but you are conscious, right? So even just having some of these breathing techniques, I guess, up your sleeve as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, as as an athlete, whatever it may be, I sincerely believe that having these, these tactics or techniques can really help you through very hard situations, be that a race or, an important meeting. I've got mates who, speak on stage, 1,000, 2,000 people. And one of the first things that they do before they go on stage is box breathing, just to calm the central nervous system.
I had to speak in front of 2,500 American just before they went on. That was terrifying.
Yeah.
They call your name. I had to go right a small second. I thought maybe I'll go left and just exit stage left. Where is he? Anyway, I want to talk about 2 more things specifically. I can talk about business, fitness with you all day. You mentioned there was a pivotal part in your career where you saw $3 million worth of revenue just dissipate from your business, and that was due to COVID, and you had to pivot quickly. What did you do? What was the realization that in one day, being a marketing agency, you got such a decent amount of money switched off your balance sheet? Yeah. What did you do?
I panicked was the first thing I did. I was literally on the ball. I was in fetal position on the floor, and I said to my wife at the time, I was like, shit, I think this is it. We're about to lose the business. So, this was during the first lockdown. I think most businesses kind of went into this panic phase and everyone stopped all spending and we got, heavily impacted by it. And, I'll never forget till this day. It was about 1:30 in the morning. We weren't allowed to drive. So yes, I'm publicly saying this. I got in my car and I drove to Mornington and back. I had to get out of the house. I had to just get my thoughts together and figure out a way out of this, right? For me, it was like, I'm not failing. I'm not going to let COVID knock me around this much, right? Got in the car, I drove to Mornington and back. And by the time I got back, I'd worked out a framework in my mind. It was a quadrant, I'll never forget it till this day, around if a client was to ring up and want to cancel or pause their service, what to do, right? And then basically 4 options. Got the team all on a Zoom call first thing in the morning. I presented the framework to them. And again, I don't want to necessarily say that was the one thing that saved us, but it definitely contributed to how we tackled a lot of these conversations, right? And the interesting thing was, as we were coming out of that lockdown and as so things were going to sort of getting back to some sort of normal, 80% of those clients actually came back and spent more money, right? And that was at the peak at which.
Do you think it was because of the confidence that you instilled in them? Why did they do that?
I gave them something to fall back on, right? Whereas when a client rang up and said, "Hey, I need to pause all my marketing spend," we literally had nothing to say to them. We're like, "Sure, no problem," right? But that was automatic revenue just disappearing right in front of our eyes, right? So we gave them options. We gave them, we gave the team something to go back to the client with, right? That it wasn't all going to be doom and gloom. There was still activity running at the time. We work a lot in retail. There was a lot of retailers that were still advertising. And it was actually those ones that took our advice, that ones that did really well during COVID.
Because they doubled down.
Because they doubled down.
So people, the first thing they cut's advertising. But what do you still need to do?
Advertise.
You still need customers.
It's time.
You still need revenue.
Correct.
But the first thing they think of is a lot of people, and I remember I called a meeting during COVID as well, and I said, we've got a couple options here. I said we can chip down and we can play defensive, or if I hear a commitment from everyone on this table, we can double down and really be aggressive because this is going to turn. Now's the time to invest.
Correct.
But if you guys all are with me, you need to say yes. They go, we're with you. That's going to be hard when to double down. I go, thank God you said that. If you said play defensive and chip down, I said you would have killed me.
That's right.
You would have literally put a dagger in my heart. But most people saw it the other way and they go, that's the time you need to stand out. Yeah. If everyone's cutting down, you need to step up.
Correct. And it was tough, right? Like it was a pilot sitting there and trying to fly a plane that was going through some serious turbulent weather, right? And arguably, we're still going through that, right? It's a super tough trading environment at the moment. And I think the brands and the businesses that are doing really well are the ones that understand that now's the time to actually take market share.
And to stand out.
Because while their competitors are pulling back and not spending, they're going, well, where do we capitalize? Where can we tap into a different audience? Where can we, introduce a new product in the market? Where can we start to capitalize and take on market share? And, we see this time and time again. It's like they're the businesses that actually thrive in this environment. Right?
They understand that.
The ones that are very fearful and the ones that pull back and stop and sorry to all the CFOs out there, listen to the conservative CFOs that tell them to stop advertising. Frankly, and there's so many cases of this throughout history where these brands, frankly, they lose a lot of market share.
Look, it's been overquoted 1 billion times, but Buffett said it many times. Be greedy when people are fearful and be fearful when people are greedy.
Exactly right.
So do the opposite, especially marketing. Right. You need to keep moving on with it. Now, I do want to mention as well, you recently came back from winning a very big award. So you've launched another part of a business called Scaled.
Correct.
In addition to your team. Now, it's going to obviously push your revenue well more than what it is now, increase more clients, which is great. Tell us a bit about Scale and tell us about the award you just won.
Yeah, so Scale was born... I asked the business this question. I've been asking this question to everybody in the business for about 3 years now. It's like, how can we take down our own agency? Because if that's not how we think as an agency, someone out there is already thinking that, right? How do we take down the industry? So I asked this question to the SEO team, and the head of SEO came back to me and said, look, well, there's all these tedious tasks, all these things that we do that frankly the clients pay for, right? That we can probably automate. I said, okay, well, let's sit down and nut this out. So it took about 18 months to actually, build the framework and the blueprint for how this platform would operate. But essentially what it does is it scales e-commerce businesses, right? And the way that it does that is it's able to build dedicated, highly personalized landing pages at scale. So imagine you sell Nike shoes online, right? These Nike shoes come in all different various sizes, colors, styles, and so on. So the platform will go in, it will analyze all the different product sets. It will create sub-products and then build landing pages for these dedicated products. So let's say it's black Air Jordans. It will pull up all the black Air Jordans. It will create a page for black Air Jordans. It will pull all the products into that page. It will write all the copy for that particular page. It will do all the SEO optimization to it. So title, headers, meta descriptions. Again, I don't want to get too technical. It will then it will index that particular page through Google and have it live within 48 hours. Just to give perspective into the scale at which it can do this, the last project we just ran a couple of weeks ago built 150 pages and they were live on Google within 72 hours. So they're highly, highly converting, highly personalized landing pages, as I mentioned, for e-com brands that want to be able to scale rapidly. So it's been, in the making for 18 months. The AFR got a sniff of it. To be frank, I don't know how. We submitted our award, it's the entry, sorry. And they said, look, we've got a photographer coming to your office just to take some shoots. Look, nothing, guys. It's nothing. They downplay the whole thing, right? It's nothing serious. So anyway, they came. I was still, I looked like a bum. I was still wearing my Air Jordans. And in fact, I was pretty much wearing what I'm wearing now. They came in, they took some photos of Sam and I. A couple of days later, they said, "Oh, we would invite you guys to come up to Sydney for the awards night." And I'm downplaying this whole award, right? I'm thinking this is like, it's not as prestigious as it actually ended up being when I got there. Anyway, we get there, we get to the Star Event Center in Sydney, and I walk in and there's like 1,000 people in this room. I said, holy shit, like, this is the real deal. The category comes up, and the first one was Optus, Saatchi and Saatchi. And I look at Sam and I'm like, mate, we've got no chance in hell of winning this award. But anyway, let's just enjoy the night. And then Impressive comes up, Scaled comes up. And then, long story short, we won the award.
That's fantastic.
And we couldn't even believe ourselves. So yeah, very humble moment.
Did you have to make a speech?
Well, I sent Sam up because he's been pretty much the brains behind it all. And I said, mate, this is your moment, right? I've taken plenty of these awards. You go up there and the stage is yours. So he went up and said a couple of words and took the awards. And it was a very humbling, very, very proud moment for him and I to see the platform go from basically an idea all the way now to, we've got clients actually operating on the platform and a big vision for where we're taking the tool. So it's a SaaS play that basically complements a lot of what we do here in the agency. It's something that in-house teams can actually license through us. And if they need some support, you've still got the managed service component from Impressive.
I want to talk about what you said, and then we'll get into our quick fire questions. Your thinking was, how do we take down an agency? Even though you own an agency, you wanted to reverse engineer what people will be. Where's my weaknesses? Where can I be attacked? And
I think as business owners, that we need to think that way.
And you're adding a service which can complement that.
Correct.
Very, very smart. I just didn't want to pass that.
Yeah, because if you're not thinking that way, someone else is, and someone will take you down. And I think the biggest challenge I see with agencies in particular, but this can apply to any category or any business, is that when you get complacent, someone will overtake you, and very, very quickly. And then it's too late, right? Because they're way ahead. Fail quickly, get up, fail quickly and move on, right? And I'm a big believer in that. I think the more you fail, the better you become as a business.
I haven't had much time. You've also got a podcast too. You film many episodes called Growth Masters. I was featured on as well. So check out Growth Masters as well. Look forward to working with you next year on a new product and brand that I've got. But as it's tradition in our podcast, are you ready for your quick fire question,
Go,
Robert?
Fire away.
What is your favorite thing about being an entrepreneur?
The challenge.
What is one career lesson that you've learned the hard way?
Don't be complacent.
If you could change one thing about your daily routine, what would it be?
Spend a bit more time with the kids.
Now, just to mention, he's got two beautiful boys born on the same day. Very, very unique. I don't know many people that could say that.
4 years of 4 years and 2 minutes apart.
That's incredible, man. Incredible.
Good timing.
Yeah, definitely. How do you balance long-term goals with short-term tasks?
I always have my eye on the prize, which is a long-term goal, but I'm a big believer in that consistency compounds. And that consistency is the little things that I do on a daily basis that should just chip away at the long-term goal. And the more of those that I do, the more it compounds and the quicker that I can get to my overall goal.
You spoke about consistency and discipline, and also saw a copy of the book Atomic Habits, which we gave to all of our team this year. So that's obviously very important to you. If you could collaborate with anyone, who would it be?
You, Chris, of course.
Besides me, which you are, you've got that one. Who would you collaborate with?
Yeah, it's a pretty good question. I've got a lot of people, but I'm a big fan of Huberman, Andrew Huberman, and what he's doing in the world at the moment. And I think
I love Andrew.
The more education that he's putting out there in the market, and he's dumbing down the medical industry, which I think in itself is very, very hard to do. So if I had the opportunity, it would definitely be him.
I could see you working with him. You're very both similar when it comes to fitness. What's your biggest risk that you've taken in your career?
Frankly, starting Impressive. I left a very cushy job that was paying, $400K plus per year to take a punt on myself with an agency that was paying me zero.
How long is Impressive? When did you found Impressive?
So it turns 9 in March next year.
Oh, that's great. How do you define happiness?
It's a good one, and something that I'm still trying to figure out. But happiness for me is quality time spent with my family.
Which is your beautiful wife and 2 kids.
Correct.
What's your favorite way to celebrate small wins?
Well, I don't drink, but I used to. And that was the way
What's
that I
your
would
current
celebrate.
way?
Honestly, it's again time with the team. Either it's going out and celebrating, whether it's a dinner or whatever it may be, or something that we do outside of the agency. I think in this environment, in an agency environment, you have to work hard and play hard.
I'm keen to hear this. What's one thing that always boosts your creativity?
One thing that boosts my creativity: running. Running is honestly, and I'll say this and I'll put it out there, it's probably saved my business. And I don't want to say it's saved my life, but it's definitely saved the way that it's created a different habit for me that enables me to go out. There's something unique about spending time with yourself for half an hour, an hour and a half, however long you're running for, right? I solve a lot of problems in my mind when I'm running.
And you're also by yourself.
And you're by yourself. It's a state of meditation, but you're doing it while your heart rate's
While you're
up,
doing something very good for your body.
Yeah. So it's you're killing two birds with one stone there. And I think if there's one advice I can give, just go out there and just go for little runs. It's amazing when you've got your endorphins running, adrenaline's running high, the amount of problems that you can solve in your head. And I always come back from a run and I've solved 2 to 3 business issues.
I run every day to the fridge, a little mochas, a little ice cream mochas. I love it. What's the most important trait a leader should have?
Trust.
Simon Sinek talks a lot about that. How do you handle difficult feedback?
I don't respond immediately. I reflect on it.
It's very, very good advice.
Yeah.
On a scale of 1 to 10, how much have you enjoyed being on the podcast live this time?
15.
Always a pleasure, Robert. Look forward to working with you and hearing all your trials and tribulations.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me on.